The Solo Show is brought to you, as always, by Victor Naraki Realtor, serving Disney in the greater Orlando area with celebratingflorida.com and disneyatyourdoorstep.com. Coming up on The Solo Show.
We're going to talk a little bit about tips. I'm assuming being part of the flight crew, are you allowed to bring a full-size suitcase or is it carry-on only?
For short haul, I'm allowed to bring a carry-on bag, and usually you might do a Euro tour for 3 nights. Mm-hmm. So actually you can get it all in on a wheelie trolley or whatever. For long haul, we are entitled to check in a bag, and the only route that I do check a bag in is our longest trip, which is Singapore and Sydney. So that's a 9-day trip, and it's just easier to have a big suitcase and you just throw what you need in.
Travelers take note as Stan talks with in-flight cabin crew lead for British Airways, Paul Degnan. Paul has lots of great stories and tips to make your travel overseas the best that it can be. And that's coming up right now on The Solo Show.
I'm Realtor Victor Naraki, and I specialize in living near Disney World. I work directly with you. I'm not a referral agent. A referral agent takes your name, takes your number, and then sells you to a random agent for a stake in that commission. When you call me, you get me, and I am there for you from the initial consultation through to closing and all the steps in between. You get me. Now, if you want to reach me, visit disneyatyourdoorstep.com for all my links, and you will get me.
And when you do get Victor, tell him The Solo Show sent you. Come fly with me, let's fly away. If you can use travel tips for your swinging trips, then stay.
Welcome aboard Solo Show Air for today's trip to fun and adventure. We've got special guest host Paul Degnan in the guest host chair for this trip, and he's got some great tips and topics to make your next trip one to remember. And now, sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and place your tray tables in their upright and locked position as we move from the terminal. Now, please welcome your captain for our adventure, a man who has only one question for you. Hawaii is kind of liver-shaped, right? Here's Stan Solo.
Hello and welcome to another edition of The Solo Show. I am Stan Solo as always, and joining me today, oh man, this is going to be a fun show. I should have asked his name beforehand. Paul Degnan?
Degnan.
Okay, I did not too bad. That wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
So Paul is a flight leader, is that right, on British Airways?
We call them in-flight leads, but yeah, a leader will do. Senior
Okay.
cabin crew, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. So, and the way I found that out, actually, because Paul and I are Facebook friends, we go back quite a few years. I think I first met you on the Alaska cruise with the WW Radio Group. And
Indeed.
I think that was their first Alaska cruise, right?
Yeah, it was.
And then we were at the second Alaska cruise together, and we had the same dining table at that one. And then again, we were on the WW Radio A Wish cruise.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah. So I know Paul fairly well. So I'm scrolling through his Facebook pages trying to figure out what the heck he does. And that's when I saw the flight leader on your name tag. So that's how I figured it out, because you had a post on your Facebook. So now I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm assuming like the flight leader must be responsible for the flight attendants is kind of what I surmised in my head. So I reached out to Paul, said, hey, would you like to come on the podcast? And you said, yeah, sure. And I said, and then you started telling me you fly planes and all stuff. I'm so confused. So Paul, what do you do?
Okay, so I'm as you would say, flight attendant. In the UK, we call ourselves cabin crew.
Okay.
So primarily, I'm there to be safe and secure in the cabin. I'm there primarily for safety, but obviously it's also about the experience, the entertainment, the food, the drink. It's looking after our passengers. Mm-hmm. As an in-flight lead, I take out the planes for short haul, so Europe from London, and then on long haul flights, for example, to America or Boston, which is where I was last weekend, I'm managing a certain cabin, and that's usually Traveller, World Traveller and Traveller Plus, which is economy. But on the 380, I also look after business class upstairs on the upper deck. So yeah, I'm in the airline industry.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you got here. Like, what were you doing beforehand, or was this always a dream of yours? What got you?
Yeah, no. So I joined British Airways in the late 1990s on the graduate scheme.
Okay.
So after I'd finished college, and I did 2 years in procurement, and then 8 years in finance. So I worked at head office. I was buying the ULDs, the unit loading devices, the silver boxes that you put underneath the plane for cargo, for baggage.
Mm-hmm.
I also bought some catering for European stations. And then I was in cargo buying buildings and other facilities. I moved into finance, doing some compliance work, and then was a chartered financial accountant for British Airways. And I went to Germany for 3 years when we had a European headquarters there. So we also had, in the early 2000s, some franchises, British Airways, Deutsche BA, which was a German British Airways. We had Air Liberté, which was a French British Airways. So we had a lot of airports that I was responsible for in terms of finance. So I looked after 37 airports in 26 countries.
Holy.
So as far east as Russia, Moscow and St. Petersburg, as far south as Tel Aviv, and Europe, France, Spain, Germany, the rest of them. And it was a really exciting job. But of course, September 11 happened and the airline business changed completely. And a few years later, I decided to leave. So I went into management consulting with a finance background. I really enjoyed that, but it's quite ruthless and it's quite demanding on your emotions, because a lot of the time you're going in, sacking people, reorganizing a business, and they're not just faces and names, they're actually real people.
Yeah.
So I didn't really warm to that, but it's very well paid. So I did that for a few years, took some time out, and then I was looking for another role. And obviously the airline industry is very dynamic. It's very exciting. You get to travel the world and you're meeting people all the time, whether it's cabin crew or your passengers or your flight crew. And was quite excited, saw people, my friends doing it, and they have so many days off. It's a really nice work-life balance, because when you're doing long haul, you might get 1, 2, 3 days down route and you can see the world, a little bit of it. So I've now been flying for 7 years and I love the job. It's a great job. As I say, it's all about people, interacting with them, making the experience in this metal tube as best as you can, but of course being safe and secure, because that's primarily the role of cabin crew.
Yeah, that's the job number one, is being safe and secure. So how much training is involved into becoming a member of the flight crew?
The application form is quite long because you need various security clearances. So I think the gap for me was about 8 months from when I got the job to actually starting my training. And you do about a 2-month training program where you go through basic first aid and life-saving technique. A lot of it is focused on security and safety. Mm-hmm. You have to know, for example, where your medical kits are on board, where the extinguishers are, fire or halon. There's a lot of information to take on board. You do a practical in the water where you have to fly. You have to swim onto a life raft and bring a colleague with you and get them on the life raft, which isn't as glamorous as people might think, and really not as easy as you think, getting someone out of the water.
Is that done in a pool, or is that done like if you do?
It's done in a swimming pool, so the water is warm.
Okay. It's a little bit different in a pool than it is in a body of water.
Yeah. And it's very artificial, because obviously it's an inflatable that's not moving around.
Yeah.
But physically getting someone from the water above you and behind you onto a raft is actually really quite difficult.
Yeah.
Part of the training, you do the slide, so you go down an inflated slide. But there's a lot of focus on the medical. So theoretically, I'm able to deliver a baby on board now, because I've been trained in that. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how confident I would be to do that, but theoretically, I've got the training. But it's more likely that I would be doing sort of a CPR or responding to a medical issue. Mm-hmm. We do have an action plan. We have fire training. So obviously fire on a metal tube in the air is quite a critical issue. So we're all trained to be firefighters and tackle a small blaze. And again, it's knowing what equipment to use when and how. So it's quite an intense program, and they do a system of 3 strikes and you're out. So there is a continuous sort of focus on you and your development, and you are allowed to sort of miss an exam or not quite get there, but you have 3 chances. And on my course, 2 of them didn't quite make it.
Oh, wow.
They are quite ruthless in that respect, but there is a focus and there is a requirement to have that sort of level of, I guess, achievement. Mm-hmm. In terms of my licenses, I do this assessment every year. It's called recurrent. And every 12 months, I have to go back to the learning centre, do practical exams on fire. and put out a oven fire or whatever. I have exams on individual aircraft, again, knowing location of where things are. There is a practical, again, where you'd maybe do scenarios, so an emergency disembarkation. And again, that's an intense 3 days, which I have to pass, otherwise I'm not able to fly. So that's quite a intense period of my annual cycle.
Yeah.
But then once you've done it, you're licensed to fly for the rest of that 12-month period. And I'm licensed on 3 different aircraft, so I can work on 3 different types of planes. The small Airbus, the 319, 20, 21, which for British Airways we primarily use for Europe, so short-haul flights. And then I have 2 long-haul flights, the 777, the Boeing aircraft, which also has the 787 as a variation, and then the Airbus 380, which is the largest commercial passenger jet in the world, the double-decker that only flies to certain airports because the landing strip required is pretty huge. We operate with 564 people on board, passengers,
Wow.
and 22 crew, and usually 3 pilots, depending on the length of the trip, length of the flight, time zone differences. But that's a really exciting plane, huge, but actually goes to some really exciting places as well.
So the double-decker, what's the seat configuration like in economy? Is it like 444?
It varies depending on where you're sitting on the plane. So if we start on the main deck, you have 14 first-class seats at the front of the plane.
Mm-hmm.
You then have Club World on the main deck. You then have economy, 2 cabins of it, and it's 343 and 343, so 2 cabins of economy.
Wow.
Upstairs at the front, you have Club World, which is business class. We then have Premium Economy in the middle of that, World Traveller Plus, and there's 55 seats in that cabin, and that's a 242.
Mm-hmm.
And then economy behind that is a 343, but at the very back of the plane where it goes in, it's 242, so it shrinks at the back.
Oh, cool. That is insane. I've never even seen a plane like that in my life, I don't think.
Not every airline has them, but they are fairly popular. Emirates have a lot of them, and they're the world leader with A380s, Dubai. But we have them, Air France, Lufthansa, quite a lot of the big airlines do. Qantas have one as well, Etihad. So they are operating, but it is obviously an Airbus project, and I don't think any American carriers are using them at the moment.
Okay.
They have stopped making them, but they do get exchanged from different airlines around the world. And it's great for obviously volume, because you've got a lot of people moving on that one departure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned the safety training and all that. So if somebody say someone's having like a cardiac arrest on the plane, is there a procedure? Like, I imagine you don't have nitro plate pills you give them, but I'm guessing aspirin or something like that.
Well, we do have a professional side to our medical kit. So we do have some of the specialist medicines that we can administer.
Mm-hmm.
Some things I, as cabin crew, can administer, but we would use MedLink, who are based in America, and they are sort of our eyes and ears for medical emergencies.
Okay.
We have an action plan that we would have with a assessor, a collector, various roles and responsibilities. So we would go straight into sort of a mode and start with that. But we do have access to some very important medical medicines, such as Temgesic. So when we open the medical kit, for example, a process would be we have to count the Temgesic because they are a critical drug and highly addictive. So we must make sure we have 7 of them there, and someone would witness that. But as you would expect, the airline has a whole process and form procedures that we would follow, and we're all trained to do exactly that.
Yeah. Is there defibrillators pretty much in every plane nowadays? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I figured it's
and part of my recurrent would be to do a CPR every year. So again, we're all trained to do that and follow the process.
Every year? Wow. I have to do it every 3 years, I think, at my job. So what made you choose to go into the airline industry to begin with? I guess you said your friends were doing it and that, but did you fly a lot when you were younger, or did you world traveling? Was that something you were interested in mostly?
I guess I did travel as a kid, and we did fly to America, to Florida, to do the Disney. And there's something quite exciting about flying, because you're up in the clouds, you see the world go by. And I guess it is glamorous to some extent, because you're going from A to B. And I don't necessarily understand how it flies and works and pressures and, oh my God, don't ask me about that. But there is something exciting about it, and it's very dynamic.
Yeah.
because the world is changing. It's a lot smaller than we can even appreciate. And there is a prestige to it. So when I first started at British Airways, they had Concorde still. And I was able to fly on that to New York. And bizarrely, you leave at 10:30 in the UK, you arrive in New York, JFK, at 9:30 in the morning. So you arrive before you leave on the same day.
Wow.
And bizarrely, whilst it's exciting, it's just a plane. There wasn't at the time in-flight entertainment, because again, the weight would add to the sort of lack of speed that it would have. But you're not paying for the entertainment, you're paying for the prestige and the travel of it, and the fact that you save time.
Yeah.
There was something quite exciting, and when it got to supersonic, there was a blue light that would go through the plane.
Oh, neat.
So it was kind of, as I say, exciting and joyful.
Yeah.
When I worked at British Airways first time, you departed, as I say, 10:30 in the morning. Further over on West Base, where I was working in an office, 10:40, you could hear the roar of the engines because it was leaving and going to, supersonic and leaving the ground. You could hear the boom. Oh my God. And it was regular as clockwork. So you could watch and go, oh yes, it's 10:40, because you knew Concorde is leaving.
Yeah.
So I guess even at an early age, there's excitement and drama of the airline industry.
Yeah.
And it just changed. You've got the alliances that have come and gone, planes that go bankrupt and airlines that disappear. And obviously the routes are changing forever. COVID happened, and as we were talking about before, the world is not recovering equally and across the world at the same rate. America and Europe has opened up, but the Far East is still very slow. They're still very nervous about flying. If you go to Hong Kong, you'll still see people with the masks on because they're nervous about what could happen.
Okay.
So the growth and the demand isn't quite there yet, versus America where, I was in Boston last week. I'll be going to LA next week. It's a lot of American travel for me at the moment.
Yeah. Interesting. So you mentioned you do short haul and long haul.
Yeah.
For you, what is considered a short haul?
Short haul, I guess, is very generic. So it's European flight, but it also includes mid haul. So for us, that would be Tel Aviv, Israel, and some of the other European places like, say, Dalaman in Turkey or Santorini in Italy. They can be sort of 3, 4, 5 hour long flights, but for us, that's short haul. Long haul is usually continental. So your Americas, your Africa, and your Far East. Which do you prefer? The Middle East would be long haul for us. So Dubai.
Which do you prefer?
I prefer long haul because short haul can be quite exhausting. You could do, for example, a Paris there and back into a Glasgow. So a 4-sector day. Up and down.
Oh yeah.
And you do the same service with drinks, food. As I take out the flights for Europe, I'd be in the front in Club Europe, business class. So they'll go at breakfast or a hot lunch, drinks from the bar. And they can be just very long days and quite exhausting. And obviously Europe is quite busy with air traffic, so you can be late, and that's completely out of your control. And as passengers are very frustrated, so are we. And I might get knocked off my next flight, or I might get stuck somewhere. So equally, we find it quite frustrating. So I think long haul is slightly easier. You've got 2 sectors, one in, one out. You might have a day in between. And actually, even if you are late, there is buffer in that. So you'll probably arrive on time or near to. And there's a flow to the service. So actually, I'm not going to say easier, but it is probably less demanding. And I like people, and you get more chance to talk to people on long haul because you've got a longer flight, longer service than short haul. And you might have 47 people in business class who want the breakfast, and you've got 35 minutes to get to Manchester. So it is literally breakfast.
Throwing it at them.
Which isn't a great service, but that's the time you've got. Manchester might be a total flight of 40 minutes. Flying time's probably 35, 32 minutes. So you are limited to what you can achieve, especially if you've got 45 people sitting in business wanting and getting their breakfast. So I do prefer long haul, but I do both. I'm licensed, as I say, to do 3 different aircraft, and I do a mixture of both short haul and long haul.
Nice. How is your schedule made? Like, this seems daunting to me. Like, I'm listening to you saying, well, I'm going a year and I do 4 flights one day, and then I got some days off. And how is this?
Okay, so Our schedule is done by a supercomputer with some manual intervention. I can bid for trips that I'd like to do. So, for example, in September, I have bid for New York because I do like Broadway and seeing a show. So I've picked out some flights I'd like to do for New York. I can bid for days off so that if I've got something that I need to do, dinner with friends, a birthday, can put it in and try and get that day off. And I can also bid for buddy bids, so flying with a friend.
Okay.
So that gets fed into the system and then it generates a roster. So every trip that I do generates days off, and I have a minimum number of days off that I have depending on the month of the year. But in New York, for example, would give you 2 days off. So it's a 3-day trip. San Francisco is a 5-day trip, gives you 3 days off. My next trip actually is a 6-day trip to Rio and Buenos Aires, and that will generate 3 days off. So depending on what flights you pick up, gives you then your days off.
Okay, I'm getting confused now. Okay, so you can see San Francisco is a 5-day trip. It doesn't take 5 days to get to San Francisco from British Airline, from UK.
No, I've got to hope not. It might have done previously, but no. So our flight is probably about 12 hours there.
Yeah.
It's a day flight, so I'll go on Monday. I'll arrive on Monday evening.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have Tuesday, and I will have most of Wednesday, and then I will leave Wednesday night and get home Thursday. Sorry, so it's a 4-day trip.
Oh, I get you now. Okay, I get you. So you get a couple of days in San Francisco.
2 local nights in San Fran as a rest, and then I've got my 4 days as the operational trip, and then that generates 3 days off.
Okay. Do you keep track of how many countries you've been to? Like, I don't expect you to name them all, but do you kind of have an idea?
I have
an app with pins in it?
So I have an app that will tell me exactly, weirdly, and it's quite a interesting one. So I have taken in 8 years 932 flights. I have travelled a distance of 23,866,7 miles. I have been on 126 different routes to 126 different airports in 55 countries.
Wow.
My longest flight has been Buenos Aires at 14 hours, and my shortest flight is Manchester at an hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a cool app.
It is, yeah. And it's got a map that shows you where I've been, which is quite clever.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can see I have covered the globe.
Yeah, mine would be kind of boring. We'd just be Orlando and back for the most part. The odd time to Anaheim. What's your favorite airport? Do you have a favorite airport? Don't say Heathrow. That's the easy answer.
Heathrow isn't my favorite airport, but it is my home airport. There are some strange airports around the world. I guess I probably don't associate airports specifically with cities.
Okay.
Because I'm passing through them like you and passengers do. Yeah. But I did used to like Terminal 7 at JFK. That was our own British Airways terminal up until last year. And we've now moved next door to Terminal 8 with American because we're in partnership with them. But having our own terminal was quite nice because that's quite unusual. And obviously quite expensive, but it felt kind of nice that it was our own British Airways terminal overseas. I think it's always nice when you open the door and the heat hits you, because often in the UK we don't have that sort of impact.
Right.
Except occasional times. So when you do open the door and you get that heat or the humidity, there's an initial sort of, we're somewhere new. But I can tell you the favourite cities. I do like San Francisco. It's very bohemian. There's something quite romantic despite the fog and the climate. There's something just quite exciting about San Fran. Do love New York. I'm a theatre person, so going and seeing something last minute on Broadway is always kind of fun. Yeah. Europe-wise, I love Vienna. It's very civilized, very clean, very tidy. The food is amazing, chocolate and the sweet. And it's just a civilized place. I really like Vienna. Going to the Far East, Hong Kong. It used to be such a hustle and bustle. It's kind of a 24-hour city. You've got the Bund with not the Bund, that's Shanghai. You've got the crossing and the ferries. And it's such an exciting city. The smells, the people, such an active country. And Tokyo as well. Quite surreal because even it's one of the few countries where English isn't spoken widely. All the signage is in the local language, and you kind of do feel really foreign. But again, there's something quite exciting about it because it's somewhere new. Yeah. And obviously they've got Disney there, so that's kind of a good one. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say Hong Kong because I'm actually going to Hong Kong and Tokyo next spring. So I'm glad to hear you say that. I know you're a big Disney fan. That's how we met, was through Disney and on the Disney cruise ships. Have you been to every Disney park in the world?
I have been to every Disney park in the world, and I've cruised on every Disney ship at the present time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we're booked to go on the Treasure next February.
Okay.
So I will continue that cruising streak. So yeah.
Very cool. What's your favorite Disney ship?
Probably the Wish.
Okay. Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love the Star Wars bar. That was kind of iconic. And I love the atrium with the chandelier and the welcome. I think it's kind of beautiful. And it is huge, and it is a mega ship, but they just do it so well. And rotational dining, to go to Arundel and have dinner with Anna and Elsa, it's just fun. And it kind of, you step into it. So yeah, the Wish, definitely.
Nice. I like the Wonder. Maybe because it was the first one I went on, but very cool. How about favorite Disney park?
I would have to say Tokyo.
Okay. Land or sea?
Both. I can't choose. There are different elements in different parks. So the sort of original Disneyland is like California, and it does feel special and not unique, but it's like got the best bits of it. And then Disney Seas, because they conceptually have taken it to a different stage, a journey under the earth. Even the
2000 Leagues Under the Sea,
Twilight Tower is a different story, different theming, and just as effective. And I've bid for Tokyo for September because I do want to see the new park. So we did in January. We did Hong Kong because they've got the Arundel extension, and they've got Oaken's sleigh ride and the Frozen ride. It's just opened in Japan, and really want to do that. The Rapunzel ride looks amazing.
Yeah, the Fantasy Springs area.
Yeah,
Tokyo Disney.
That looks really impressive.
Yeah, so you're going in September.
I'm going to bid for it in the hope of getting a trip there.
Okay.
Get 2 nights there, so again I'll do a Disney day and try and check it out.
Yeah, I haven't heard how hard or easy it is to get into that section, because you kind of have to make a reservation to get in.
You have to make a reservation in advance. They have a package if you're staying in the parks.
Yeah.
And then in order to enter the area, you have to get an entry.
Yeah.
And then to ride them, you have to get a sort of a fast pass. So it's not as straightforward in rocking up and trying it.
Right.
But I guess that's the same when they open a new ride and there is the volume of people. So when we did Hong Kong, Arundel was new. So we stayed at the Hong Kong park because then you've got guaranteed entry, early entry, so you can get into the new bit. And I'd say it's worthwhile because then everything's Disney, isn't it? Your hotel, the breakfast.
Yeah,
the whole experience. But
yeah. We're definitely staying at a Disney resort for Hong Kong. Tokyo, I'm on the fence about staying on a Disney resort, hotel or friend.
We stayed at a partner resort.
Yeah.
So I think it was the Hilton. Other hotels are available.
Yeah.
And you get the same benefits, but not necessarily the price, because obviously they do have some very expensive Disney hotels, literally on the edge of the park, if not looking into the park.
Yeah.
But you get the same benefits if you're at a good neighborhood hotel.
Well, and they took away. They used to have like the 15-minute extra entry. They took that away, except for deluxe hotels now in Tokyo. So we're getting off topic here. Once I start talking Disney, that's the topic. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to hear from Cody from the Being a Fan of the Disney podcast. Him and I are kind of doing a switcheroo where he's playing ads for me and I'm playing ads for him. So if you want to hear our ad, you got to go to Cody's podcast to listen to it. And we're going to be playing Cody's here. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about tips for flying. We're going to pick Paul's ear or brain for tips. So let's take it away, Cody.
And now a message from Cody's Inner Dialogue. Hey, Inner Dialogue. Yeah, what's going on? Hey, we have actually been asked by Stan Solo to say a message about Being a Fan of Disney, the podcast, Being a Fan of Disney, the book, being available on Amazon, and the prospectus files being available on Kindle Vella. Isn't that cool? Stan Solo. Whoa, man. That's a pretty big time for you. Are you sure you're ready for this? Yeah, man. It's just like a simple thing that I'm going to read. Yeah, but I mean, you're kind of entering the big league now. You gotta be careful with this. You can't stumble over your word. Would you just stop? No, I mean, I'm just trying to help you. Come on, man. Stop. Oh, fine, whatever. Sorry, Stan. I don't blame you if you don't use this.
There we are. So check out the being a fan of the Disney podcast. Cody has some fun stuff there. Some great guests. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about tips. I'm assuming being part of the flight crew, I have no idea, but are you allowed to bring a full-size suitcase, or is it carry-on only?
For short haul, I'm allowed to bring a carry-on bag, and usually you might do a Euro tour for 3 nights. So actually you can get it all in on a wheelie trolley or whatever. For long haul, we are entitled to check in a bag, and the only route that I do check a bag in is our longest trip, which is Singapore and Sydney. So that's a 9-day trip, and it's just easier to have a big suitcase and you just throw what you need in. And actually 9 days, yes, you can fill it. But regular trips, now I have quite a large wheelie. It's the maximum size that you can carry as a passenger or as crew.
Okay.
And that does me what I need.
I imagine for Singapore, you need extra room to bring home stuff from Disney. But
Well, Disney and Universal, because they're in Singapore.
Yeah.
On Sentosa, and that's a really good park as well.
So any tips on unpacking?
I've recently found this thing called packing cubes.
Okay.
And they're like bags within a bag, so they are useful because then they're color coordinated and can have a label on if you choose. But they go in your bag, and it just keeps everything organized. So when I open my bag, I've just got lots of little bags, but there's probably 8 bags with different bits in it. So one has got all my chargers and electronics in. One has got food, because I always carry food with me just in case. One has got my underwear and socks. One has got my shorts, my shirts, my gym kit, and it just keeps me organised. So I like packing cubes. I guess you could just use your plastic bags or paper bags, but it just keeps it organised. I'm one of those OCD people that I would hate it if you opened your bag and there was just bits everywhere. I like it to be neat and tidy and organised, and that helps me. So I use packing cubes.
A lot of people say to use the packing cube. My wife swears by them, and to me, it feels like it takes up more space and more weight. But I'm going to give them a go because we have them. Yeah. My wife uses them all the time. So,
and you can get different size ones, so you can sort of mix and match, and depends what you're taking with you.
Yeah.
I always carry my gym kit, not that I always use it, but it's there just in case.
Just in case. I imagine you deal with all sorts of different types of passengers. Do you have any tips for nervous flyers?
Nervous flyers, I would suggest talking to the cabin crew, because sharing what your concerns or issues are. We obviously fly all the time, so to me, it's like getting on a bus. I just get on a plane and it goes. But I understand nervousness around all the strange noises, the strange feeling. But actually, if you explain what's happening in layman's term, because I'm not a technical person, it can reassure people. And often, sometimes distraction works. So if you've got a film you're watching on Netflix or whatever, reading a book, you focus on that whilst we're taking off and landing, because that's perhaps when you're most nervous. And for nervous flyers, some of them have the bands, so travel bands, which is meant to help sort of relax them. So I have seen that quite a lot. But I would say that you're more likely to get hit by a car crossing the road than you are being on a plane crash. So in that respect, statistically, it isn't a issue flying, but it's not something that a lot of people do every day. And I can understand the nervousness and the uncertainty. But also watch a YouTube video on flying if that helps you. So you can understand what the process is. But don't be nervous. You're going from A to B, and focus on the future and what you're going to see or do. Whether you're catching up with friends or you're going on holiday, and that's the end goal. So this is part of your journey.
See, I used to be a very, very nervous flyer, and I've flown enough now that it's kind of not so bad. But my big nervousness wasn't so much about the plane crashing. My big nervousness was myself getting airsick. That was what my biggest concern was. Do people get airsick? Like I notice now the airsick bags, 9 times out of 10, they're not there anymore. Do people use them? I heard people collect them.
We do have passengers that do get airsick. And there are usually in the front, in the seat pocket, there is a paper bag. And sometimes you get handed the paper bag and you're like, thanks. It's just great. So we dispose of it, obviously, because it's waste. But people do sometimes throw up. But no, it might be related to alcohol or some food they've eaten rather than flying it. As in life, people can overindulge perhaps. And flying can have an impact on the body, especially if you're not regular flying. So but you do get occasionally passengers that are sick.
So it's not every flight. It's rare.
No, and I think there are tablets that people can take to help you with air sickness.
Yeah.
And those bands, as I mentioned, people do use them.
Mm-hmm.
When I first went on a cruise ship, I remember the first night, and it was the movement, and you're like, oh my God, I can't cope with this for 5 days. But actually, again, you kind of settle to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done numerous cruises now, so I think you do get used to it, but it's the unknown, as it were.
Yeah. I use the patches behind the ear for cruises. Yeah. Apparently, they're not available anymore in Canada, so I don't know what's going to happen. You mentioned people getting sick from the food. Is there anything you shouldn't eat on the food? Like, I think back to the airplane movie where everybody who had the fish got sick on the plane.
Well, to reassure you, the flight crew do have different meals. So your captain and your first officer would have
different meals from each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that if there is something potentially wrong, then that's managed, as it were. I guess you should eat what makes you comfortable. It's known that people can bloat on a plane because of the atmosphere and the bubble you're in. Mm-hmm. So perhaps having heavy food isn't good. They always advise you not to have alcohol. Some people use it to sort of get them through the flight. But I don't think being inebriated on board is a good choice, because the atmosphere can be quite oppressive. It is obviously fake oxygen in terms of you are in this bubble. Yeah. And alcohol can have a bigger impact than you think on the ground. So avoiding alcohol is probably better for you. And drinking juice and soft drinks is probably more hydration, because it is dry on a plane. So using moisturizer would help, and drinking lots of water. But airline meals, they are researched and prepared in a way that are meant to taste better and taste well, because your taste buds are less effective in the air than they are on the ground. So they are specially designed. Some of them can be quite salty because, again, your taste buds are not as acute and working well as you would on the ground. But usually they're all right. And again, there's always a lot of allergen information. So if you've got a specifically dietary requirement, you can order foods in advance, or we can tell you, well, actually, the chicken has no wheat in it, so you could have that as an option.
Okay.
Dairy free, and again, there are different options. So always speak to your cabin crew if you've got a food concern. They will be able to tell you, well, actually, this contains this or that, and what allergens are in certain foods.
It seems like peanuts are almost done now. Like almost every flight I go on now, they say they're not going to be serving peanuts or having peanuts. That seems to be just get rid of them already. People don't need peanuts on their flights. I'm serious,
Well, traditionally, we don't now serve peanuts in any of the meals, because obviously that is a big issue. We do offer peanuts and snacks for Club World business class with their drink, but again, that's moved more to chickpeas and other savoury snacks. Nuts are an issue because certainly in the EU, there's 14 different allergens that we have to sort of monitor and be aware of, and it's the same the world over in terms of intolerances are a growing field, and people's awareness of what's in food is huge now. So
you mentioned the snacks. What type of snacks does British Airlines have? I don't know if I've ever flown British Airlines.
On short haul to Europe, we would offer you a small snack and a complimentary bottle of water. And that might be corn, savoury corn, or shortbread biscuit, crisps. So it's literally a small snack. And then you're able to buy on board sandwiches, more crisps, biscuits, whatever you want to eat, little hot sandwiches. On a long-haul flight, in economy, you would have a selection of snacks. It might be biscuits. Again, the corn appears, or crisps. There are some dried fruits and more healthy snack. But actually, people don't want that. They're on holiday. They're treating themselves.
They want the crisps.
They'd rather have chocolate. We've just launched a new dairy-free chocolate. So again, the allergens are playing into that. In business class, again, a slightly bigger selection of snacks and little salads and pots of yogurt and things. And again, in first class, there are different options available. So again, depends how much you paid and what snacks you're going to get offered.
So if I'm flying economy and they ask, would you like to have the crisps, the cookies, or the dried fruit, and I go, I can't decide. Can I have one of each? Is that a no-no, or would I get I get one of each?
It depends. If you ask me, I'd give you whatever you want, Stan.
Well, I know you would.
I guess we would encourage you to take one or two items. Because it is for everyone. But if, for example, you're on a night flight coming back from Boston, we've got a box of snack. Most people are asleep. So actually, if you want to take a handful, no one's going to object. And I'm one of those that if it's there, then have it, because if it makes your flight better, it's no skin off mine. It's not my snacks. It's not my crisps.
Yeah.
Yeah, take them all. And I've got a lot of colleagues who are very generous like that. I guess when we're giving out the complimentary, we are managing that. So we give you one initially, but then if you've got spare ones, we'll probably leave them on the back and you can help yourself.
Yeah. I know, like I try to always get the exit row. I pay the extra money and I try to get the exit row. And only once I had it happen where the flight attendant or the crew member came by and she goes, "Oh, I always give my exit row people an extra one," and it made me feel so special. Like it was like, "Oh, I got two things of cookies today." It was really
strange because in economy on long haul we give our passengers pretzels, which is a very British thing at all, obviously.
Yeah.
But I always joke with the passengers that it's a slice of America here because it's a pretzel. Because a lot of my flights are American. But yeah, it varies. But it's, again, just a bar snack, isn't it? Because we're going to serve you a meal shortly.
Yeah.
But I guess something to munch on.
Yeah, exactly. More often than not, I bring it home for my wife, the cookies or whatever. She likes that. How about jet lag? How do you handle that? Because you're doing these long hauls from the UK to LA, and you're up the entire time. I'm guessing you're not taking sitting back with your pillow and having a nap the whole way.
Not the whole way, but I do get a break.
Okay.
So if on my, say, 11-hour flight to San Fran, I'm probably going to get a break of 2 or 3 hours.
Okay.
And we do, on the 380, for example, we have bunk beds underneath the plane in the cargo hold.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we'll get proper horizontal rest. There are legal limits as to how long I can work.
True.
And based on a journey, what breaks we must have and whether we have horizontal rest or sitting in a high comfort seat. So I'm not working the full 11 hours. But jet lag, I guess I've got used to it because it is a lifestyle. I'm flying once or twice a week, every week. And you kind of get into a routine. So landing day for me when I've come back is usually a write-off of a day where I will get home. I have a routine and I will unpack my bag, have a cup of tea, have a shower, go to bed. And whether I have 4 hours or 8 hours, I will get rest because I've usually worked through the night from America, arriving into London early in the morning. It's easier going westward, so going from London to Boston, and you can extend your day. So even though there's a 5-hour time difference, you arrive and it's mid-afternoon rather than late evening. You go out for dinner, go to a show, which is what I did last week. You can extend your day and then have a sort of a few hours extra sleep, and you'll sort of catch up that way.
Okay.
I guess you should sleep when you're tired.
Yeah.
And you do get used to sort of travel, but going east is quite hard. So you then lose time, and my body does find that hard to sort of adjust. So going to, say, Hong Kong, and you arrive, and again, it's early morning, but actually it's not for you. You're kind of, for you, it's early morning. For them, it's the afternoon, and you need some rest before you can start going and doing things.
Yeah. See, we're doing when we go to Hong Kong, we're doing the red eye. The night eye, the red eye. I think we leave like San Francisco or at 11 o'clock at night, and we get in at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So my plan is to just sleep all the way there. So when I get there, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm good to go. That's my plan. We'll see how that plan works out.
Well, good luck with that. That's not an option for me because I have to work.
No, exactly. Do you have the same crew with you every flight, or for the most part? Or is it someone new you're working with every day? Or
yes, so when I rock up, there are 14,000 cabin crew at British Airways, which sounds a lot, but actually compared to my American carriers now, it's quite a small one. But no, I don't know who I'm working with. I've got a list of names, and I will recognise some people because I'm on the 380 probably twice a month. So certain people do pop up, but no, every time I fly, I'm with a brand new set of people.
Okay.
We are recruited so that you are sociable people that can get on with that flexible sort of approach. We did used to have teams, so I would meet up with about 20 colleagues, and we would do every quarter a flight together. But since COVID, that's disappeared.
Oh, wow.
And I rock up, and it can be a whole sea of new faces, and you start again. And it's always nice when passengers notice you're getting on with your crew, and they're like, "Oh, do you know each other?" And you're like, "No, we're just flying today." But you kind of get on with
it. It seems like that often, where they seem to get along so well. It's like, "Oh, you must have been together for months already. Like, yeah.
But it's the nature of the job, and you can, as I say, buddy bid. But given the number of flights, the number of options and different rosters you can have, it's unlikely you'll get that pattern. But as I say, if you fly the same aircraft and sometimes the same routes, you often see some similar people or the same people. People do pop up. So on my flight on Friday to Rio, a girl's already messaged me saying, "Oh, you're on my flight. Oh, I'm looking forward to catching up."
Oh, nice.
We can see who's on our flights and who's there.
Yeah.
I can't remember who she is, but it's very nice and sweet because you forget all flights merge into one.
Yeah.
And you can get the crew bus, and people will go, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm fine."
Yeah.
Do
I know this person, or are they just being nice to me?
I'm terrible with names.
Yeah.
So
you are.
It's great to have a name badge.
Yeah.
But I do forget people's names. I can recognise your face, but I wouldn't be able to tell you where I've flown or when it was.
Yeah.
So it is nice when you do catch up with someone you've flown with and have a laugh.
Yeah.
But it is very transient, and I guess they recruit people specifically to be able to cope with that. I don't go to one office and see the same people at the same desk every day.
Yeah.
I can be doing the same route with different people. It's a multitude of options.
Yeah.
And that makes it exciting.
Cool. That's pretty cool. That's one thing. Like,
if you
my job,
with them,
in my job, I always say, like, if there's a manager I don't like or a coworker I don't like, they transfer us around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Either they're going to get transferred or I'm going to get transferred before too long. So it's not going to last forever. I keep telling you.
So we have a swap system. So I was meant to be doing 6 days of Europe at the end of the week, and I swapped it all for a Rio Buenos Aires trip.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have the option to sort of swap your trip.
Yeah.
But having now been promoted to in-flight lead, the pool for me swapping is a lot smaller. So I used to be able to swap it as main crew quite easily.
Okay, yeah.
You put an advert up and people offer you their flight. There's less opportunity for me now, but you still have the option too.
Mm-hmm.
And I will put my roster up to see what I can get better.
Mm-hmm.
Then decide whether I want to swap it or not.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is, I don't like that manager, or I've flown with them and that was an awful trip. So
not working with Susan again, that's for sure.
Yeah. Human nature, I guess. Yeah.
Speaking of tips, what are some things people can do to make your job easier as a passenger? Sit down and shut up.
That would be marvelous, wouldn't it? I guess it's basic things. So in some languages, people don't have please and thank you. So you have to bear in mind that when you're talking. But most of the Western countries do. And yet they get on a plane and sometimes they forget where they are and their manners.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it more pleasant for us if people are, "I'd like a Coke, please," rather than just saying Coke. Because obviously then we go Coke, Dark Coke, Coke Zero.
Yeah.
I think the cultural factors do take a part, and in certain countries and certain nationalities, there's a caste system or a hierarchy, and again, the perception of what cabin crew are and do can be different around the world.
Mm-hmm.
I guess following instructions. So there's some classic examples when there's been emergencies and people still need to get their bag and their hand baggage and their handbag and their drink and their food. And you think, well, it's an emergency. We're leaving this plane for a reason.
Yeah.
And the reason we're asking you to leave your bag is because you might slip and block someone else's exit. They might fall over it and break a leg.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to evacuate the plane. So following the instructions is important because it could be life or death. That's what we're trained to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to stop and get my handbag and my passport and my drinks and what have you, but we're getting off the plane because it's an emergency.
Yeah.
And I think just being considerate of other people. So obviously the gap between seats has probably shrunk over the years, and it isn't as luxurious as air travel used to be. So being aware of other people and not eating the smelly pizza, not being too loud and aggressive, because again, it's a shared space.
Mm-hmm.
Being respectful of other passengers, because we are on this metal tube flying through the air.
Yeah.
People forget that sometimes, and there's only so much we can do.
Yeah, I know. Like you see, like passengers will flip their hair over their seat, block the screen or whatever other person behind them. Yeah, don't do that. That just causes.
I've seen people sort of draw on people's hair because they're like, "Well, it's in my space, so let's add a pattern to your hair."
Oh my gosh!
You have to be aware of other people.
Yeah. The other thing too, I noticed, like as I'm leaving the plane, it looks like it's like the back lane of a slum city of how much garbage people leave behind. It shocks me. Like, can the people not pick up? And you guys come through, like the flight crew comes through 3, 4, 5 times to collect garbage. How is there so much garbage left behind? Beyond me.
I know. Who knows?
People pick up.
Yeah, we go through. It's one of the few jobs where you can literally go through talking to people going trash, 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 trash. And they can't take offense because I'm not calling you trash, but I'm asking for your trash. Subtly. It is amazing how messy and dirty people can be.
Oh my gosh.
And I guess you can excuse young families with perhaps little kids and toddlers. But generally, again, people forget they're in a plane and it's going to come off somehow. And yes, we do collect the rubbish. We do recycling. But people, again, forget. And yeah, I'm surprised how much rubbish people have. And again, when we're landing and the seatbelt sign comes off, everyone stands up, grabs the bags, and then stands in the aisle.
What for?
It's a bit like, well, hold on a minute, but we're going to get off.
Yeah, where are you going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there might be a message from the captain saying, oh, we're just waiting for the jetty to join. I recommend you sit down for a few more minutes. No one moves. They all stand up and wait.
Yeah.
And
the only
that's
thing
when
I
you're
can
like,
think of is maybe they want to stretch their legs that badly or something. I don't know, but they're in a hurry. Like, just sit down. You're not going to get out any faster. Like, seriously.
But it's the same when boarding, and I guess for low-cost carriers, there's a baggage issue and maybe not enough space. And if you don't have your bag in there, then it might get offloaded. We're pretty good at that in terms of doing the Jenga and fitting it all in. But actually, again, people rush to get on board and then they spend hours sorting out the bags and getting out the book and the iPhone and the headphones and what have you. And there's, again, 45 people behind them waiting to go beyond. So, again, consideration. I don't know, we've become perhaps less considerate of other people.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like, even leaving the movie theater, the amount of trash that's left behind, or a sporting event, the amount of trash that's left behind. It wasn't like that before. People used to take their trash with them and put it in the bin on the way out. They have them all over the place. Like, it drives me nuts. You're talking about the in-flight entertainment. That must have been almost a godsend. People being able to watch movies now, and as opposed to reading books or magazines, and that people are quieter, I think, on the planes in that regard because they're actually got their earbuds.
They are, definitely.
Yeah.
And technology's moved on. So it used to be you'd have, say, 12 channels with 12 films, and you'd have to watch it as it was produced because you know what, you can't pause or fast forward it. Now it's all individual. You can have 50, 60 channels, films, movies, recordings, different languages, which is obviously very helpful if English is your first language. It does help, and there's games on there, some interactive games where you can play other people on the plane. So who wants to be a millionaire, and you can challenge someone else. But I don't personally get it because I've got an iPad and I have my own entertainment and it kind of goes with me everywhere. So yeah, you have to remember that sometimes it doesn't work. In-flight entertainment might fail or what have you, or you might not have internet connection. So bring your own entertainment, whether it is a book or an iPad or other device. It does help because clearly people get on straight away and can start watching a film.
Right.
And people then switch off because it is relaxing and what have you. The choice is amazing now. New films, old films.
Oh, yeah.
TV series. You can really binge watch lots of things. So,
Oh, for sure. You being in and out of Heathrow, you must see famous people from time to time.
I do, yeah.
So is there any that stand out that were extremely nice or very pleasant?
I won't talk from personal experience because that might be inappropriate.
Okay.
But Joan Collins, who was famous actress in Dynasty and other films, she is meant to be and has a reputation for being a very courteous passenger. She used to be on Concorde at 1A regularly and would have time to spend with the crew. I've personally had Gordon Ramsay on board a flight to LA.
Okay.
And despite expecting him to be effing and blinding, because that's his character on TV, he's a real charming passenger and interested in the food and what we do. And again, we've had megastars who speak through their PA or their assistant and won't talk to any of us because we're not worthy.
Get out.
And that happens.
Yeah.
And some people that you would expect to be charming are less than charming. But it's a job, and I guess we don't necessarily know what's going on in their lives, what's happening behind the facade. But the expectation often isn't as consistent as you'd like it to be. But they're all human. and they have good days and bad days.
Yeah.
And I guess it must be hard traveling as a celebrity when everyone's looking at you and watching you
The whole time.
and you just make a beat.
Yeah.
And have a quiet flight or switch off.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some sports stars who actually, having just done a tournament, might just want to sleep and have water. And they're the best passengers because they don't want any attention.
Yeah.
And literally a bottle of water and they're asleep. And they're resting from a Grand Prix or a tennis tournament. And actually, yeah, we love them.
Yeah, oh, nice. Gordon Ramsay didn't take the pie and throw it against the window and say, "Go back to the kitchen and start over."
Oh no, that didn't happen.
So if I gotta ask who's the best, I gotta ask who's the worst. No, I'm just joking. I'm not gonna ask you who's the worst. Who the worst is. Let's not go there. But what is the worst experience you had with a passenger? Have you ever had a pass? I'm guessing there's passengers. I've been on planes where they kick passengers off the plane before you're taken off.
A few months ago, the first time in 8 years, I had a flight where the police were called and met us at the gate. So when we landed at Heathrow, we went to a remote stand. If you were on aircraft left, you could see the police there as the steps were joined. And we had 2 passengers taken off before misbehaving. So one was a little bit threatening to another passenger, and one was very drunk and a little bit aggressive. And during the flight, we'd managed the situation, but we'd warned them if they weren't to calm down and deal with their issues, they would be met by the police and dealt with.
Yeah.
That was quite scary because you don't know how they're going to react and respond. And you have nearly 220 other passengers on the plane. And you just have to sort of keep it calm, keep it professional, but aware that it could kick off or they could get violent or aggressive, what have you. And the police came on, and at Heathrow they come with machine guns, which is always quite dramatic. And then, as is in the modern world, once the person had been selected and marched off, all the mobile phones come out.
I was just going to say, everyone's recording it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a sight to behold, because up until now, everyone's been really quiet and still, and we're keeping everyone sat down because obviously we've got the police coming on. And literally, once this guy's got off, everyone applauds, and then the phones are out because it's such an unusual event.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle of the aisle and thinking, everyone's getting the back of me now because that's a really great shot. So, yeah, that was kind of strange. But at the same time, it's reassuring that if something does seriously happen and you do need that support, the captain and the flight crew will support you and bring the police on at the required time.
Yeah.
So that's an unusual situation, but it does happen. And there are probably more cases of air rage now than there were previously. Not necessarily because of alcohol, but I guess because the world is a different place.
It is. It really is. Like, I work in a grocery store, and customers are the worst now than they've ever been. I've been 27 years in the same job, basically, and they're worse now than ever. I don't know what's changed, but so I wanted to ask you your scariest moment. That would probably mark as one of your scariest moments. Probably is.
I think so. Yeah, I've had some turbulence, but that's to be expected, and I guess it's a bit like a bump in the road. You don't necessarily expect potholes, but they do happen.
Yeah.
And you keep going. And we've had some serious ones where, yes, you're kind of holding onto the trolley to make sure that it doesn't make the mess. And that's scary at the time, but it's often very quick and it just happens and bang, it's got over.
Yeah.
I think people, because you just don't necessarily know what's going to happen with the situation and whether it could escalate. So we do carry handcuffs and we are able to restrain people.
Okay.
And that's, most airlines have that requirement, and that's reassuring.
Just handcuff everybody as soon as they come on. And then handcuff when they leave, and everyone will be happy.
But again, it's safe and secure for the majority. So you have to sort of manage the situation and calm them down. You don't want it to escalate. You're in a metal tube flying through the air.
Yeah.
Your options are quite limited.
Yeah, for sure.
And we clearly have to keep that flight door closed and locked. So in the old days, you might get the captain because, again, figure of authority, usually a bit more mature. That's not an option anymore.
No.
As the cabin crew, you have to deal with it straight away. And people can be quite intimidating and aggressive and loud. And mobile phones come out. So again, how you deal with it can be quite telling because you just don't know what's going to happen to it. And we can ask people not to film, but we are it's very hard to stop them filming.
Yeah. Well, at the
And
same
often when
time, though, you
film,
kind of almost want it's good and bad, because
Yeah.
at the same time, if the guy does slug you first or something like that, well, you got 20
It's
recordings out at every
yeah.
angle.
correct.
You know.
And yeah, so even though probably the airline didn't want this man being arrested, watched on Facebook and TikTok and everything else,
Yeah.
it will reassure people that we do take action when required.
You're right.
And so there's a positive and a negative side to both stories.
Yeah.
And filming, yes, it can be useful in a situation to have a record, certainly if you're some distance away and you're watching the scene unfold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Do you ever have to, I imagine you do have to, language issue. You're traveling all over the world with all sorts of different people. I'm guessing apps help, or just motion language or pointing.
Well, you forget, Stan, that I'm British, so if they don't understand me, I just shout louder and slower, and it works. But on a serious note, on certain routes we have international cabin crew. So for Hong Kong, for Buenos Aires and Rio, we will have local speakers that only exclusively do that route to and from London.
Okay.
For Tokyo, we have Japanese speakers that fly obviously the other way around from Tokyo, Haneda to London and back again.
Mm-hmm.
And they are very useful in being able to translate local customs, obviously speak the language, and get over that barrier. We used to have a lot of them around the world. We have a lot less now since COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly on, say, the Japanese route, we're also taught cultural briefings that when you're presenting the cutlery, you present it with two hands and open palms, because, again, you wouldn't hand it over because it's seen as offensive. So we have to learn those kind of things because it's obviously affects people. Language, we did used to ask people to have a language skill, but not anymore. The aviation language is English, but we do secondary announcements in a foreign language.
Okay.
And we do have language speakers. So again, in the briefing, you might ask the cabin crew, does anyone speak the relevant languages, so that we have an idea. And we have people like, police officer, ex-police officer. So again, if we need, that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone that works at the NHS, the National Health Service, has a medical background. So people do bring different skills to the job. Mm-hmm. Language is one of them.
Okay. I imagine sometimes passengers too might be able to help out to speak both languages.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's hard to hand a cutlery over with two hands palm facing when it's a third seat over. The third seat in, that can't be easy.
Indeed it is. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Alrighty. You do an awful lot of traveling. You've been all over the world. You've been, what did you say, 2 billion miles or something like that? 2 billion miles. Yeah. Have you ever had your luggage lost?
I've had it delayed, yes.
Okay.
I think I was flying from Singapore into Sydney, and my bag didn't make it from Singapore. So it arrived, I think, 5 hours later on the next flight. So I have lost my luggage, but I don't check it in that often. Mm-hmm. So I hold on to it and it stays in the cabin.
Okay.
And for short haul, I wouldn't bother because I can carry everything in a wheelie trolley, an overnight bag.
Yeah, yeah.
And even America trips, I have the largest bag that you can legally carry, so it fits in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's really nice.
Baggage is an interesting one. So when T5 opened the new terminal for us, there was a huge baggage issue. It's got better, and there are odd instances now. But luggage is like people, and you load them up, they've got a barcode, and they get scanned and sent round.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've got medical equipment and medicine you need, keep it on your hand baggage. Mm-hmm. You've got a set of clothes, a bit like getting on the cruise ship. You take that on with you so you can get changed whilst your bag is moved to your room. You keep what you need necessary with you.
Yeah.
And hope it gets there.
You know what? That's a really good tip, because I'm not a carry-on person at all. I check everything. I probably should stop doing that, because I do have medication that I need to bring with me, which I should probably keep with me.
Yeah.
Good tip. That's a really good tip. I got to stop doing that, because I live in Winnipeg. I'm not going anywhere without a layover. If I'm going to Orlando, I got a layover in Chicago. If I'm going to Chicago, I got a layover in Minneapolis. It's just the way it works. I don't understand how it works, but that's how it works. So I don't like carrying stuff around with me when I'm at the layover airport. So that's why I just check everything and I'm hands free. But yeah, you're right. I gotta stop doing that. What advice do you have for somebody who wants your job, that this is they're listening to you and they're going, you know what? I want to see the world. I want to visit every Disney park in the world. This sounds like the type of job I'd like to make a career on. What advice do you have for somebody, say they're graduating from high school or graduating from college now, and they're going, I could do this. I could see myself.
Obviously apply for it. Airlines are quite transient jobs. Yes, you get your lifers, and certainly in America you get the loyalty and the seniority. For most European airlines, we've got rid of seniority. So I as main crew, I could work any position on a plane, and often did. Mm-hmm. It's more restricted now that I'm a lead, but you kind of need to be flexible. You need to be a people person. So if you've got clubs and societies, if you're at university or college, even your hobbies, get involved because it shows that you're an all-round person. Airlines are looking for different people. If you go to the Middle East, your Emirates and your Etihad, they're very robotic. They're very professional. Somewhere like British Airways and even American, they want your personality. They want you to shine as a person. Mm-hmm. We're not robot. And therefore, have a personality, enjoy life, and don't be afraid to talk to people. And I guess you learn that from doing. So club, society, sport, get involved.
Yeah.
Show an interest in travel because the world is so different, but a small place. So again, if you can show some cultural awareness, that will help you in your application and then hopefully in your career. It's an excellent job. I love my job. It's a fun job. It's not rocket science. I'm not an astronaut, but I am managing people internally with the cabin crew and the flight crew, the dispatcher, the caterers, check-in staff, but also the passengers. And I love talking to them and finding out why they're travelling, what they're up to. Sometimes it's for a birthday, sometimes it's for a funeral, and you have to be sympathetic and empathetic. But it's fascinating to learn why people travel and what they're doing and what their plans are and what they're going for. And you really have to have sort of confidence because part of that is the job. People like talking about themselves. People like to engage. Mm-hmm. And often it is a happy occasion, but sometimes it isn't. And again, you need to sort of be responsive to that. I think it's a great job, and I recommend it to anyone because you're right, you do see the world, but it's very selective because I might be in Paris for an evening. I might get to have a dinner and see the Eiffel Tower. I might not be back in Paris for another year and a half.
Yeah.
But I do New York quite a lot because I love the theatre and I bid for it. And you can see a new show, you can see an old show. And again, I think you have to make the best of it for yourself. So I've seen Phantom in Polish. I've seen The Lion King in German because they do local shows in local languages. Yeah. And that's fascinating to see something else. But that makes it work for me. So I think you have to get what you want out of it. As you know, I have funny eating habits. I'm a celiac, so I'm gluten-free, I'm dairy-free. I love going around supermarkets to see what food they have and picking up bargains that I don't necessarily have. So I was in Boston last week, came over with a box of bagels, gluten-free bagels. Mm. I go to Chicago, and they've got the cheesy popcorn from Garrett's. Love that. So again, the world becomes your supermarket because you're able to pick up different things.
Oh man, I love that idea. When I go to different countries, like when I went to Paris and London, I think I spent just about as much time in the grocery stores than I did in the souvenir shops. Because for sure. Absolutely.
And so you should, because again, the world's different, and I'm lucky in that respect that I'm able to sort of pop into different supermarkets and try different things. And sometimes you like them, sometimes you hate them. Oh my God, there's some weird things out there. But hey, you got to try things. So
yeah, absolutely, very good. We're quite a bit over time, but we had. I love this so much. This was such a great
I can talk for England. Sorry.
This was. I really, really want to thank you for your time and for coming out. I want to thank everybody for listening. I'm sure you listened all the way through because this is a fascinating show. Do me a favor, people that are listening. Go on iTunes, give me a 5-star review. If you do that, my understanding is that your next scratch ticket, you're going to win something. That's what I've been told, that people that leave 5-star reviews on podcasts, luck comes their way. That's what I have to say. Paul, thank you for coming on. This was absolutely
thank you.
Any final thoughts or comments or words that we didn't get to?
No, but I would say my personal philosophy is about saying yes to things in life. So little Paul would not have dreamt that I'd be a flight attendant, working cabin crew, but saying yes to things in life leads you to new paths and new adventures, and I wouldn't change it now. So say yes to things in life.
Great attitude. Great attitude. That's a great tip too, for sure. And with that, Ken, take us away.
If you have a brilliant idea for a future edition of The Solo Show and would like to take your turn in the guest host's chair, then drop us an email at thesoloshow01@gmail.com. Tell us your idea for the show, and we'll contact you about a date and a time for you to join us. If you would just like to keep the conversation going or have a comment about a previous show, then visit us on Facebook at The Solo Show. All logos, sounds, and songs that are made by and for Disney and its affiliates are owned solely by the Disney Corporation and are not, nor are they intended to be, the ownership of The Solo Show podcast. We hope you'll join us for the next adventure on The Solo Show. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.